Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. I got my hair cut. I've been wanting to get my hair cut short for about 3 years at this point, and I figured if I don't do it before I go to university, I never will. So I chopped it all off and I love it. I really love how this looks and I very much like how swingy it is and just, makes me so much happier than the long hair did. And now on to the actual video. This is my last week at home before university, and so I have been doing a fair amount of reading, and the last 3 books that I have read have been very good, and I would like to talk about them. All 3 of them, as well, are Black own voices literature, which is fantastic, so I am very excited to get to talk about them. I will go in the order in which I read them. So first of all was Who Put This Song On by Morgan Parker, and we'll just take a second to acknowledge how gorgeous this holographic rainbowy cover is, cause very nice. So this is a story about a teenager named Morgan Parker. This is a semi-autobiographical novel which is based on the author Morgan Parker's diaries, and it follows her final year of high school in 2008 specifically. It follows Morgan going from being very, very depressed during the summer holidays to interacting more with her school and her culture and her environment to really think about the ways in which she connects to people and to herself in order to lift herself out of this depression and to just enjoy her final year of school. I thought it was a really, really interesting book. Because it has been based on someone's diaries, it follows a very, very linear structure. It isn't really plot-driven, neither would I even say it's particularly character-driven. It is very, very accurate in terms of a passing of time as a teenager, writing about the things that matter at that point, the ways in which people become more and less relevant in your life, and the ways in which you interact with the culture around you. In particular, because it is set in 2008, Morgan talks a lot about emo culture and alternative culture, specifically around music and dress sense, and how that interacts with her as a Black teenager as well. It is 2008, so this is also the year in which Obama was elected as president, and as Morgan goes to a very, very Christian school with an extremely white colonized curriculum, she ends up being sort of the unofficial spokesperson for Obama during all these class debates about whether or not there should be a Black president. There are also limited discussions about her queer identity. She sort of alludes to being into women as well as men, and also about her varying relationships with 2 boys. She ends up with a crush on a guy named David, which doesn't work out, and I really, really appreciated in this story how there wasn't a clear kind of, she meets a guy, she gets rejected, but he ends up falling for her and she gets her happily ever after with this guy. No, it was very, very accurate to life in that her feelings faded, she just continued on with her life, and it wasn't a big deal. She also talks a lot about the very explicit racism that she deals with as a Black teenager in a white neighborhood in a Christian school. She ends up being fetishized by one of her classmates who she thought she might actually have a chance with, and her brother gets racially profiled by a policeman really close to their home at one point as well. These are all just little things in what is, I would say, not a particularly cohesive plot, but in that way it is a very realistic depiction of teenage life, and especially of this era in terms of the internet and Black culture and emo culture and all these different things mixing together. I really appreciated how true to life it felt in that way, and in a way it was also nice because I couldn't see where it was going, because it is just someone's life playing out in the way that life does, where there is no narrative, there is no, arc for each character, it is just people interacting with people. I really enjoyed as well how it challenged my thoughts. When I first started reading it, I wasn't particularly invested or engaged with it, mostly because it makes a lot of references to noughties culture and to Black culture that I just didn't get, and so I felt kind of like I was being excluded from the story in that way because it was so not accessible for someone like me. But I continued reading anyway because I wanted to give it a shot and went, oh, this is very much the point of the story. Morgan is very isolated because she is Black, she is depressed, she is in a white Christian neighborhood, and she feels deeply misunderstood. And so all these references to her life as it is are a very, very exclusive experience for people who grew up in a way that she did, and so I am sure this would be a fantastic book for a wide variety of people who grew up in a similar environment and time period to that which Morgan did. However, even for me as someone who can hardly relate to any of this, once I had accepted that this was part of the story and that actually it was a very important part of it, it was really, really easy then for me to appreciate the ways in which the narrative and literary format create the same sensation that Morgan gets as a black teen in a very, very white colonized environment. It is a story mostly about self-acceptance, but just in a very, very gradual way. Morgan doesn't have some epiphany while she's in one of her therapy sessions. She doesn't suddenly get put on the right medication that transforms her life and she is perfectly okay. But she starts to confront the things that make her life difficult and to realise that actually life isn't always going to be like this, and she has control in many of these areas. She starts a protest at school against the curriculum that wants to teach that the Black Panthers were a terrorist organisation. She decides to confront her two best friends who are both white when they start saying racist things to her about how she's not really black because she's not ghetto or anything. And she confronts a lot of the inconsistencies within her family about the double standards they set for her and her brother, and the ways that they exacerbate her mental health problems while still trying to help because they are her family. And it was really, really interesting to read just from that perspective of a teenager just coming into themselves and accepting who they are. I thought it was really, really interesting and I thoroughly enjoyed it as a book, and I'm sure this is something that will really resonate with a lot of people. And yeah, I just found it a really, really nice story and I'm very glad that I read it. It isn't like my favourite book ever or anything, but still, I would still recommend it to people, and I thought it was fantastic, especially as a debut novel. I thought this was a really, really interesting take on semi-autobiographical literature and broadly about interpreting your own life experiences into a story, because it gave it that really realistic, linear structure of this is just life. People fade in and out. I make bad choices. I regret things that I do, but life still continues. And I really, really liked the ending scene in which there's a New Year's Eve party and Morgan appreciates that she's made it. She's made it to the end of the year, and that's enough. So yeah, Who Put This Song On by Morgan Parker. Highly recommend. It's really, really interesting and gave me a fantastic new perspective. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamida. This is a book that I picked up the other day, mostly because I wanted something that I could really get invested in. It's been a while since I've read a thriller or a murder mystery or something where you need the answers so you just keep reading, and I figured, perfect, Ace of Spades will be right up that alley. When I spoke about Ace of Spades in my last video, in which I had just bought it, I said that it had been likened to a thriller, but I didn't really see how it was going to be a thriller. However, I was very much taken aback when I started reading it because it is a thriller. It has that thriller, nervousness and tension and this drive to find out what is going on, and it was spectacular. It reminded me of all the best parts of One of Us is Lying, with so much more social commentary that was really, really refreshing. This is the story of two teenagers named Devon and Chiamaka who go to Nivius Academy, which is an incredibly expensive private academy for privileged, rich, mostly white students. In fact, Devon and Chiamaka are the only two black students in their year. And then, as the new term starts, they both find themselves put in positions of privilege among their students. Chiamaka is made head girl, and Devon, completely out of the blue, is made a senior prefect. He in particular is shocked by this because he has shown no inclination towards these positions before, and he's not even sure why he's been put up there. However, Chiamaka comes from a very rich and comparatively privileged black family, and she knows that she has to work hard to get to a position that will allow her to go to Harvard or Yale or another really prestigious university. So she works incredibly hard to get to the top spot, mostly by making sure that she is friends with the right people and that she is dating the right people. So no surprise for her that she is made head girl, because that is exactly what she has been working towards. However, that very day, a text goes around the school revealing some very personal, very private information about Devon, and he is suddenly thrust into the spotlight among the students, and He has no idea where this has come from. And very soon, Chiamaka starts having similar texts being posted about her, again revealing very personal, private information. And they eventually come together to start to work out what the hell is going on at Niveus Academy. There are some phenomenal plot twists in this that literally made me shiver because they were so wild and in some ways unbelievable, but also, oh god, this is entirely believable. This makes so much sense and this could very realistically happen in real life. It was mind-blowing. It took me aback and it made me kind of scared to walk around my house alone at night, just because I've spoken before about how horror stuff I don't really read. I will tolerate sort of creepy stuff in a real life way, not paranormal stuff, because don't get me started on that. But when I reread Jack of Hearts and Other Parts, I was reminded of how creepy it was to have a stalker plotline. And in particular, Devon and Chiamaka have photos of themselves posted to this text chain, and they have no idea how these pictures could have been taken because they have been taken in their homes, in their gardens, and it is incredibly invasive and scary. I thought this was just written absolutely fantastically to really hold on to that tension, to make you really want to see what happens, and because this isn't a small book either. This is like 470 pages, which for a thriller is pretty substantial. They tend to be over quite quickly just because you need that plot to keep flowing. But I really appreciated how long it took for Chiamaka and Devon to become really solidified characters and to really establish their connections to their fellow students and the other people that they interact with, and I think it really aided the story. I also want to do a very brief comparison to One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus, which was the sequel to One of Us Is Lying. I adore One of Us Is Lying. I hold up that it is a very good murder mystery. However, One of Us Is Next let me down so hard. It was boring, it was repetitive, and it didn't make any sense, mostly because, very similarly to Ace of Spades, a text starts going around revealing the personal information of various students at the school. However, at no point does it seem believable that someone wouldn't just go to a teacher and go, "Hi, they're posting really embarrassing stuff about me, what the fuck's going on?" And so it just makes no sense. It's an idiot plot in that effect. However, with Ace of Spades, both Devon and Chiamaka have very good reasons not to tell anyone about what is going on at the school. Firstly, because they fully well believe that the teachers would not help them. The information that goes out about Devon is in regard to his sexuality and him being gay, and he doesn't believe that his mother would accept him if she were to find out, so he knows that he can't say anything so as not to risk his relationship with her. And also because the boy he is dating at that time is also a drug dealer and needs to maintain a reputation of being tough, and he knows that he won't be allowed to see his boyfriend anymore if this information gets out to his neighbourhood. And Chiamaka has a reputation to uphold. She can't go telling the teachers that this stuff is happening because it would threaten her position and therefore her future. She also knows that she can't tell her parents because of a horrifying incident the summer before where she was an accomplice in a hit-and-run situation, and she knows therefore that if this information gets out, her classmates will know that she is by default a murderer. All this shit hits the fan, the truth of the situation comes out. I will not spoil it because it is absolutely fantastic, and the moment at Computer 17, which is all I will say, where Devon sees what has been left on the screen, I shivered. It was terrifying and it was phenomenal. I cannot understate how fantastic this book is and how well it tackles so many different issues in such an on-the-nose, blunt way, and it was fantastic. I also really liked the epilogue at the end to show the impact that this incident has had on both Chiamaka and Devon and the ways that they are trying to use this experience to better both themselves and the world. So yeah, Ace of Spades, very much it. If you like your thrillers, if you like, not murder mysteries because there's no murder in this unless you count the hit and run incident, but just crime, creepy stuff, incredibly tense stuff with a good old dash of social justice thrown in there. Phenomenal. Very much enjoyed it. And then the last book that I want to talk about in this video, which I finished this morning, is Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. This is one that's been sat on my to-read pile for about a year now, and so it was on my priority before uni to read list because I just didn't want it sat there any longer. I had started reading it, I don't know how long ago now, maybe at the start of this year, and I only got about 30 pages in before I just didn't care, and so I gave up on it. However, yesterday I had to sit around in a hotel lobby for multiple hours before meeting up with a friend, and so I had plenty of reading time, and I got really stuck into this and thoroughly enjoyed it. Full Disclosure is the story of a black teenage girl named Simone who is HIV positive. She has been HIV positive since birth, and so it has just been something that is a part of her life. However, she has just escaped a very traumatic situation in which her HIV status was outed to her schoolmates at her previous school. She has since transferred and is in a new place with people who don't know this about her, and she is very eager to keep it on the down low so that the same thing doesn't happen again. However, as she starts to get closer to a boy named Miles, who is also working on the school musical theatre production with her, she starts getting threatening notes left in her locker saying that she needs to stay away from Miles or her HIV positive status will become public knowledge. So although this has a very thrillerish setup, it actually isn't really about Simone trying to work out who is sending these notes, but more about her navigating her identity as a black woman, as an HIV positive person, and as a teenager coming into sexual maturity and looking to explore her sexuality in a very physical sense, while having this HIV positive status impacting that. Her two dads are very much supportive of her and take her to all her doctor's appointments, but they are very eager for her to remain abstinent, as that is the only guaranteed way to make sure that she doesn't spread HIV. However, she is a teenager, she has feelings, and she knows that abstinence isn't the way to go. She will want to do things in future, and so gearing herself with the knowledge of how to do so safely, both for herself and for future partners, is the only way for her to really exist. One of the things that I appreciated most about this story was its very realistic, casual, and accepting exploration and depiction of teenage sexuality. Simone has two best friends and they frequently talk about their sex lives and their expectations for sex, as Simone believes she is bisexual, although she isn't sure. One of her other best friends is bisexual and the other is an asexual lesbian, and so there is a lot of talk about masturbation, about sex toys, about sex partners, and all these different things, and it was really, really good to see that accurate, realistic, and accepting depiction of the fact that teenagers will probably have sex, and so there is no way to just ban them from doing things. It is better to give them the right knowledge to take care of themselves safely. One of the aspects I really appreciated as well was the fact that Simone is considering whether or not she is bisexual and experiences a lot of internalized biphobia about whether or not she is bi enough to identify that way. She talks specifically about the fact that she knows she is attracted to men, but that she's had very limited attraction to women and doesn't know whether that is enough to qualify her. And she also experiences biphobia from one of her friends when she does eventually try to come out in that way. And it was a really interesting depiction of bisexuality. It feels like in a lot of queer literature, people who are bisexual are very bisexual, and there is no doubt about whether or not they are bi enough. And so this depiction of someone who is pretty sure they are but doesn't feel qualified to take that label felt very realistic for me as someone who is not bisexual, so I cannot comment in that regard, but it added a lot of nuance both to Simone and to the discussions of sexuality as she navigates a relationship with a boy while still thinking about this aspect of herself. I really, really liked Simone as a character as well. She is just such a delight. She is really passionate about musical theatre, and so her involvement from Miles stems from him asking her to talk about her favourite musicals. He isn't particularly interested in them, but he just loves the way that she lights up when she talks about the things she cares about, and firstly, really, really wholesome to see that being the start of their crush and their interactions and their relationships, but also because it gave Simone such a well-rounded personality that she has such a clear passion, so that while all these other things are going around with these anonymous notes telling her to stay away from Miles, her blossoming relationship with Miles, while she contends with the fact that she may well have to disclose her HIV positive status to him at some point, with her dads trying to talk to her about sex, with her friends trying to maintain their friendship while she is exploring a relationship for the first time, and just all the trials and tribulations of growing up, really. It also helps as well that the school musical that she and Miles are working on is Rent, which talks heavily about the AIDS crisis and HIV and all these things that impacted especially the black and queer communities. It added a really nice extra layer to the story that Simone is having to consider how to portray these things on stage because she is the student director, while not wanting to actually talk about the fact that hi, I kind of have lived experience of this. It was also just a very informative book for me. I didn't know a huge amount about HIV or AIDS before I read the book, except the very, very basics, and yet it educated me so much. I didn't know, for example, that people with HIV can have their levels of the virus go to undetectable, meaning they can no longer transmit it to partners while that is still in effect. That as long as they take their medication, they can expect to live an otherwise healthy, normal life. And that actually people can have healthy relationships with those who aren't also HIV positive. That you can have a very, very well-rounded and otherwise normal life while still having this as an aspect of yourself and how you interact with the world around you. So I was very appreciative of how open it was about its discussion of the virus, of Simone's condition, and in talking about the ways that people react when you come out as being HIV positive. I thought it was really, really interesting, and I just really, really liked it. I do have one tiny, tiny nitpicky thing that I just want to bring up. Simone's two best friends are called Claudia and Lydia. Those names are too similar. I kept mixing the two of them up. Of all the complaints I have about a book, it's such a small one, but also Claudia and Lydia. Really? Were there no other two names you could have given the two best friends? But I digress. It was a really good book. It was so educational, and I really, really liked the messages and the stories that it shared, and it was just an excellent exploration of Black and queer culture. Yeah, I just thought this was a fantastic book, a really interesting one, and I'm so glad that I gave it another chance even though I sort of gave up on it the first time I tried to read it, because it's a really, really nice story and I thoroughly appreciated it. So there we have it. Those are the three books that I have read most recently. All three of them are written by Black authors with own voices, Black experiences, and discussions of queer identity, of diversity, of culture, white supremacy, colonisation, HIV, all these different things. It's been a really, really good mix of books, and I feel fulfilled for having read them. I feel like I've gotten so much from all three of them, and they have all broadened my perspective that little bit more. So highly recommend all three of them. I thought they were great. Now, I'm leaving for university in 3 days, so I have no idea when the next time I will get to read something for fun or when I will next get to make a video. So in case it is a little while before I get to do that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. It may just be a while because I will need to settle into a new home. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about these three books, and I hope that it inspires you to pick up one of them because I thought all three of them were really, really good. So thank you. Please give this video a like if you did indeed like it, and comment down below if you've read any good own voices literature recently, because it's always a good thing to learn more about different perspectives, especially from people who have those experiences themselves. Yeah, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of my bookish content, and I will see you, whenever it may be, next time. This is the story of teenagers. And then the last book that I want to talk about in this video, which I finished, and then the last video